So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back after lunch. And I promise I won't make you fall asleep. I will talk about our journey at Microsoft, what we did, how we built our dam, where we are now, and some of the things that we learned along the way. And then I'll leave a few minutes at the end for Q&A in case you have any questions. Okay. So why DAM at Microsoft? Microsoft, like any other enterprise company, is really big. We have 100,000 employees across the globe and 100,000 vendors. We today have a very disjointed and disparate system across how we do marketing. And one of the things that we haven't really done well at Microsoft is how do we manage our digital assets, our IP. Typically, in most teams today at Microsoft, our assets are being managed on SharePoint sites. And it makes sense, SharePoint is our own product, and marketing teams have been storing the assets there. But in certain cases, actually, assets are not even stored on SharePoint sites. They are in emails, on people's laptops, on OneDrive. In certain cases, they're not even being brought into Microsoft. They're just sitting with the marketing agencies, the creative agencies who create the assets. So our IP is actually sitting outside of our company. So that's basically how what our current situation is. When marketers, they need assets, they have to dig and find. In most cases, they're not able to find what they're looking for. And what they do then is they go and ask the creative agencies to create new assets. So a lot of recreation of assets is going on at the company instead of reuse. This is compounded by the fact that we also don't have a way to track in case there are security leaks that happen. And we've had cases at a company where campaign assets for upcoming products and launches were leaked. And there was no way to track where the leak came from, or there was absolutely no audit that could have taken place at that point because assets were not stored centrally. And then all of this insanity even further gets aggravated when you look across the company and you see that your marketing teams are not only in one place, in Cork, but they're actually spread across the globe. So we have 13 different regions. Or areas, they the marketing, and within each area, like APAC and Western Europe, there are all these subsidiaries, and that's where our local marketers sit, who also create a lot of these assets. So then, where we came in then, about a year ago, when I joined this new role, we said, okay, so this madness has to be, fixed. And we need to go in and really create a nice little closet of all our assets. Bring it together, being able to quickly index it and keep it in one nice place so that when marketers need something, they can quickly go and get the assets that they're looking for. So with that, let me just tell you a little bit of the story. It's called the 100-foot story. Really is about the last 365 days of my life. And how we reached here today. So about a year ago when I started in this role, my manager said that this is the situation at the company and let's figure out a way to fix it. At that point I didn't know anything about the DAM space. I was new into the role. My background is business intelligence. So I said, okay, let me just figure out then how to get help. And one of the places I got help from was the Henry Stewart conference last year in May. I came in looking for what would be the right solution to manage digital assets at Microsoft. I didn't really find what I was looking for in terms of the solution. I asked a number of questions, I sat in a number of talks. I didn't find the right answers, but I did get at least 10 or 12 LinkedIn requests from vendors after day one. So that was encouraging, at least to form those connections. What we were really looking for at the time was to build a dam in the cloud. And through serendipity, we, at the DAM conference, I ran into our current DAM partner, technology provider, Stylelabs, and their product M, Marketing Content Hub. That product definitely had potential to do what we were trying to do at Microsoft. And at Microsoft, as some of you might be aware, we have the largest cloud infrastructure in the world. It's called the Azure platform. It's a combination of a public and a private cloud. And that's where we wanted to put our DAM, which is all the digital assets at our company should obviously be sitting in our own cloud, which is the Azure platform. And the other thing that we were looking to do then is use the power of Azure to distribute our assets across the globe. And Azure data centers, we have about 21 data centers across the globe. We wanted to bring the assets closer to where the user is. So if the user is in India, and when he goes and previews the image or downloads the asset, the user should be getting it from the location closest to him, which is our Singapore data center. The other thing that we wanted to use from Azure was this whole concept of hyper-scalability and elasticity, which is as your volume of assets increase, as the number of users who are using your system increase, the system should be able to respond automatically. It's not a case where you have to figure out and plan your servers and the storage that you need well in advance, but it has to happen as it's really happening on the go. So with all that, we said, okay, there's nothing that really exists like that out there. So let's figure out how to build it on top of the M engine that would form the basis of all of this. The other things that were our requirements when we started thinking about it was that this DAM has to be a service model. This was a very different concept and very new concept, and I think it still is. It's called DAM as a service. So at an enterprise especially, when typically you would deploy a technology like a DAM, it is done at the enterprise level, but what happens is that you create or you build this pie and you say that, okay, this pie applies to the entire company. So all marketers now start eating this pie. And it's the same one flavor of it, which is vanilla. But then as you start to onboard marketing teams and users to it, they'll say, no, this doesn't meet my requirements. I was actually looking for, a different flavor. And can you change it to meet my needs? Change the flavor. And at that point, the enterprise solutions, because they are so conformed to their set models, they're not really able to change those models to meet those requirements. And so what we said is that at Microsoft, when we build our DAM for the enterprise, we will actually do it as subscription. So each marketing team will have its own kind of mini DAM. In that DAM or in that subscription, they can do whatever they want to. So they can have their own UI, their own metadata model, their own domain model, their security workflow, etc. And we'll customize it for them. And then we'll have another marketing team that can set up their own subscription similarly. So that way we'll have DAM as a service model at the company. And the way it would all function still together is that although every team will operate in its own DAM, still all the assets will still be stored in the same repository, which is Azure. And we'll enable cross-tenant searches. So you could still be in one tenant, one subscription, and if you want to find assets from another subscription, and you have permissions to do so, when you search, you can actually find those assets easily. And so the assets, the sharing of assets, finding would still happen globally, although you are in your own little space, your own closet to your liking. So it was a very different concept, but it worked. It really worked at our company, and when we started approaching people that this is how we're going to set up the DAM, they listened. So 3 other things that were really critical to the DAM that we were trying to set up at our company was that the UI had to be really modern, cool, and sexy looking. It is the face of how people come in and get their assets. It had to be really responsive as well to different form factors. It should work on a mobile device the same way it will look and feel on a laptop. The second thing was that it has to be very high performing. Your DAM cannot be slow. It's not where you think that anyone would have the patience to go to the DAM site and then just let it churn and for the assets to come up one by one, and then when you click download, it will then show you, the download is happening, and then after 5 minutes you have your asset downloaded, or even the upload speeds. So it had to be really performant in every way. It was very, very critical. And the third thing that was really critical was the search engine. I think it's everyone's experience that it's very easy to store assets. It's very easy to store things, but it's very difficult to find those things. And a DAM completely fails, in my opinion, if you're not catering to the search aspect of it, which is how easy it is to find your asset years and years later, if it is, and to find that asset quickly. So real-time indexing of the content and full text searching in all global languages and all of that. So those were basically our very simple requirements. When we started building the DAM, we said, okay, let's figure this out and how this would work. So we had all those requirements, and then we had to give it a name. So the naming ceremony was easy because it was a DAM, it was in the cloud, so we called it Cloud DAM. And that's how the name was born. It was simple. And then something interesting started happening, which is engaging with the users and the marketing teams to onboard them to the DAM. So this effort at Microsoft was not an executive-sponsored effort where our CMO said that, okay, guys, I think we need a DAM at Microsoft, and here is, the money for it, go build it. That was not really the case. It was a very grounds-up effort that was started in my team by my GM, who said that we need a DAM at the company and it needs to happen now. So when we started this, we said, okay, we have to figure out now how to engage people. So I started cold calling. At that point, I was literally, because we are 100,000 employees spread out and no one knows each other, but we have a directory. We have a directory at the company that has everyone's title and the team they work in. So then I started looking through the directory and identifying people who were either Marcom managers or content publishers in the title names and started calling them up. It was like, hey, have you heard? We're building a DAM for the company. I think you'll be interested in this. And that actually went on for at least 4 months. Just randomly calling up people or getting introduced to people through different folks in my network so that I could have a DAM conversation with them. And some of them responded, most didn't, because we didn't have the product ready yet. It was under construction. This whole concept of building something on top of M to be deployed in Azure with all this coolness around it was not there yet. And we were also configuring it and customizing to our needs. So we said, okay, we need to have something out really, really fast. And that's where, within 6 months of engaging with our technology provider, we released our first DAM solution in the cloud for our first set of marketers, which was basically the field marketers. And that actually was not really the right choice, because you are talking about rolling out a net new solution to about 4,000 or 5,000 global users. And people who really don't, most of the people who really don't understand the concept of DAM, in general, all are so set in the ways that they already work, which is I can store my assets on the SharePoint sites, or it's okay, my assets are with my creative agency. But it was a very interesting rollout. So we went live, and then we started the process of the rollout. What that meant was all these training sessions, which is like awareness that now there is a DAM for field marketers. Use it. Second, how to use it. So training them on actually this is what you do. We had thought that the training would be the easiest part, because the way we had conceptualized the DAM was that the UI would be as simple as brushing your teeth, but it never is. It's still a tool. And so then with that, we started a little bit of a roadshow where I started then traveling to all these regions, Western Europe and Asia and everywhere, to have these working sessions, hands-on sessions with our global marketers. And in those sessions, what we did was, instead of doing like dummy or fake sessions where and training them, we said this is real production site. Bring your assets and upload them right now into the DAM. And let's tag it. Let's sit in the session and let's tag it. And I'll guide you through how to tag it. I'll guide you through how to upload it and how to search and download. So I did that rollout. And they were very skeptical in the beginning. Again, it was not something that they thought was mandated or they should be using it. So it kind of had a little bit of an optional feel to it as well, as far as they were concerned. But when they started seeing the tool, how easy it was, how performant it was, how easy it was to store and download assets, they got it. And they started seeing a lot of value out of it, and the adoption started going up. And we started getting a lot of feedback from them. From one of the regions, they sent us an email saying that Cloud DAM is a blessing. And someone else said that this is my favorite tool in the world. So we started hearing that kind of feedback. It really encouraged us. It told us that we're on the right path. We can move this forward now. And the way to move this forward was, like I said, we had to evangelize it within the company. And we had to have the marketing teams on board to it as tenants, but they had to pay for it. Because we didn't have a central source of funding for this. We just did this on our own. And now you are telling all these marketing teams that not only it's in your best interest to use a DAM, but by the way, you also have to pay for it. So they were not happy.
Everybody take notes.
Yeah, because all my conversations I remember all my conversations, and they still do. They start off really, really well, but they end really bad. Because every time the question comes up in the end, because they get so excited looking at it, they're like, okay, is it free? And that's the question they ask, is it free? And I'm like, no, it's not. So there's a cost to it. So then they'll say, okay, what's the cost? And why are you charging us? And why is not someone paying for it? Like, who's going to pay for this? It's not coming top down at this point. But then in December, we got our first paying customer. So which was even more encouraging, because we thought that our financial model that we had set up behind this DAM could work too, which is what we were charging our customers. And what we were really charging was not something to make money out of it, like internally within Microsoft teams making money from each other. It was really the cost of the solution. We had to pay the licensing fee. We had to pay the hosting costs. Azure is our own platform, but we still have to pay hosting on it, and we had to pay the support costs. So tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, these are people who are supporting the system 24/7, 365 days a year. So all that was required funding and required money. And so we said, okay, anyone who onboards has to pay a slice of the piece and start using it. So we released our first tenant, and then we released so this was the first paying tenant. Then we released our second paying tenant, and then we had a third paying tenant. So this was really, really encouraging at that point. And at that point, what happened is a different phenomenon, which is it started going viral within the company. People started hearing about Cloud DAM from each other, and they started sending people my way. So my cold calling stopped, and theirs started. And they said, hey, I heard that you are leading this DAM effort, and I'm interested in learning more. So at this point, within our company, almost the entire, all of the marketing teams have reached out to me in one way, form or shape, which is to either learn more, to figure out how to get funding from their own leadership team, or to get onto the roadmap to actually roll them out as a tenant. And so all that happened, but at the same time, we also knew that just rolling out tenants and is not, your job is not done. Your job actually starts there, because you have to then support these tenants. And what that means is that you have to govern how the systems are getting used. You have to support them. You have to train new users. And to a large extent, you have to police these systems. So we came up with the concept that let's have librarians sitting offshore in India, and whose job would be to monitor these tenants every single day. Are there corrupted files in the system? Are there assets ending up without previews? Are there assets sitting in the approval queue without the approvers approving them? So things like that. So we have people whose daily job is just to monitor and police these systems, to keep them clean and hygienic. And they reach out to the authors and the admins of these systems and say that, hey, we noticed this. So this is how they start the email. They'll say, we saw that you uploaded 20 assets, all good. But we noticed that these assets were not uploaded in the right way or have these issues with it. And so they have had that follow-up process going on, and that was really, really important. It will continue to be a big part of what we do on a day-to-day basis, is as we set up these new tenants, is also to keep these tenants nice and clean. And so the other thing that started happening around this time, when I was talking about leadership sponsorship or executive sponsorship, was that some of our executives saw CloudDAM, and they heard about it from their people who were using it, the marketers, and then they started actually showcasing it in their conversations with Microsoft customers and CMOs and partners as a showcase of not only the power of our Azure technology and platform, but also showcasing how Microsoft is changing the game in terms of digital marketing and modernizing how we are doing our own marketing at the company. So that's where we now have a lot of executive sponsorship behind the DAM. They love the tool, they love demoing it, and it just generates a lot of interest internally within the company, because we can use these testimonies as, did you know that this was demoed on stage at this conference by our CVP or by our CMO? But then it also generates a lot of interest outside the company about the capabilities and the power of DAM being in the cloud and being in Azure. And then the other thing that we continue to be focused on, and I think our job is never going to end, is around ROI. So how do you really drive true value, the return on investment of building a DAM and using a DAM? What is the productivity gain? What is the gain that you get with the number of security leaks going down? What is the gain that you get in terms of your cost savings, where you don't have to recreate new assets, but instead you can reuse the assets that you've already created? I think we are probably going to be continue to have challenges on that front, which is to really drive true asset performance and return on our investment. There are certain soft metrics that we track through our reporting and insights, which is more pivoted around what's the usage of CloudDAM, how many people are downloading assets, which type of assets are getting downloaded, for which product, in which geography and language, and then which assets haven't had a single download. So then there is some feedback that could be provided back to the authors, the marketing teams that created those assets, that no one downloaded this asset or viewed it. So things like that. So that's the story. I'm here a year later telling the story. I think there is a lot more to be done. We are on this journey, and maybe next year I can come and tell part 2 of the story to all of you. So just a couple of things that I've touched on that I just wanted to reiterate a bit around DAM innovation that happened at Microsoft through this journey that we had in the past 365 days. One is just the innovation around how DAMs are perceived. Traditionally, DAMs have been on-premise. They still continue to be on-premise, and but this was a DAM that we built in the cloud. Also, the whole DAM as a service concept that I explained, that within an enterprise, you could have a subscription-based model. Within a subscription, you can do, have your own flavor of your little DAM to work with. The third was the licensing model. This was also very innovative, how we set up licensing with our technology provider, because we didn't have a pool of money to pay them for their product. So we said that let's swim in this together. So if we succeed, you will succeed. And if we fail, it's too bad for you guys. So this model was really a pay per use model, which is as more tenants will subscribe and come to the platform, that's how the licensing model would work out. So very different in terms of how traditional licensing works for DAM software. Innovation around business model. This was interesting because all this that you're seeing at the enterprise scale that we are now planning to roll it out and build this year and hopefully complete this in a year's time, complete the onboarding, was actually driven out of the marketing team, not the IT team at Microsoft. Which is, again, very different, especially when you're trying to implement these kind of solutions where you're doing a lot of architecture and design and implementation and figuring out kind of a new DAM in Azure. This is all driven out of marketing operations team at Microsoft with very little involvement with the IT team. Then the whole concept around internal selling, where you are literally selling it just to your own teams within your own company and asking them for money for it. So it's like typically doesn't happen in most companies, this kind of a model. But we created a model around it, created engagement agreements, which is more like our own mini SOWs. Where when a marketing team agrees to onboard, we have them sign this agreement which says, okay, you guys owe us this money year over year, and the agreement also says, and we owe you in return your DAM solution and its maintenance, its uptime, its availability, and we define SLAs in that agreement. So it's kind of literally a customer and a client engagement model happening just within Microsoft between things. And this was also, this whole concept of service and even some of the stuff around internal agreements, this is also happening in other spaces within our team, in marketing operations, across even other services around analytics that we offer from our team, around content management that we offer from our team, where it's kind of our team is becoming into this service provider internally to Microsoft sales and marketing teams. And project and resource management. So this was actually done, we didn't really have resources as well. So we didn't have money, we didn't have executive sponsorship, and we also didn't have resources to do all this. So one person, full-time job was just this for pretty much majority of the last year, which was me. And I got some money to hire a few vendors. But that was it. And then we worked very closely, so it just helped. I think it was a very different way of working where you're not really so much collaborating and having multiple decision makers. You just take the decisions yourself on, do it or don't do it. And every single day we had tough decisions to make on every aspect of it, how we were rolling it out, our design, our solution, our launch dates, what bugs to fix, what bugs to punt, etc. So all done through just a single resource model. And then finally, just the innovation around agility and time to market. So designing something like this from grounds up almost and having our first launch within 6 months, and then rolling out our subsequent tenants pretty much every 2 months from there. So we created this whole framework around how this thing would work end to end, and that worked out really well.